I melted coconut oil in here. I melt the coconut oil and then I put lavender and what else? Lemongrass essential oil in there, so it helps me to I just like bring them to school and do some little skincare sometimes. Also the smells helps me to relax, release stress when I am in school. Yeah, so I'm just gonna take a little bit and put it on my palm just to relax, 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 relax. It smells so good. Relax, 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 relax. Relax, 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 relax. Relax, relax, relax. Relax, relax, relax. Can you smell it? Lemongrass, 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 lemongrass. Relax, 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 relax. Here, I'll give you some. Okay. Okay. I know I need a lot of preparation before I actually start studying, but right now I got some texts. And I will start highlighting the important stuff, and if I find anything that's important or interesting, I will let you know. But today's subject is Western art history, and right now we are talking about the ancient Egyptian kingdoms. So far I am at the old kingdom Egypt. It's from 3000 BC, 3000 BC, 3000 BC, 3000 BC, 3000 BC, 3000 BC to 2150 BC, 2150 BC. Okay. Let's see how far I got. Okay. So we got a technical term here. It's called relief, 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 relief. So relief means relief start with some sort of flat surface with such as slab or of stone or metal. The imagery is carved, cast or molded into or onto that surface, projecting out from it. A good example of relief is the coins is in your pocket. Relief is meant to be looked at only from the front. If you walk around the back of the relief, you don't see the back side of the figure, but rather you see the back of the slab or coin. Figures in reliefs can project well out from the backing materials, which is called either high relief or deep relief. This gives a lot of contrast between light and shade because the projecting parts get much more light than the deeply shaded receding parts. Relief where the figures do not stand out far from the surface, like the coins in your pocket, are called low relief or shallow relief. It is much harder to make out the low contrast figure in low relief, but since nothing projects out from the surface very far, it is hard to break pieces off accidentally. The Egyptians liked low relief because it worked just like painting, and usually they did paint too, but it was also much more durable. Paint can easily flick off from stone, but if the stone itself has the figures carved into it, the figures always remain visible regardless of how well the paint lasted. Relief is therefore a good way to decorate an object, like a palette item of furniture or a building. Relief will be a fair game technical term throughout this class, used by every culture we study. The other kind of sculpture is freestanding or sculpture in the round. This is not a technical term because everyone knows what this kind of sculpture is. It is the complete figure without a backing slab, like the statue of some old guy in the park or even a Barbie doll. When you walk around the back of the freestanding statue, you see the back side of the figure itself. The specific imagery of the palette of Narmer. Narmer's powers is emphasized by showing him conquering a helpless, peddling enemies on the front. So, a side note for people who haven't studied Egyptian culture, Narmer is the first emperor of Egypt. He's originally from the the Upper Egypt, which is actually the south, but they call it Upper because it's like upper stream of Nile River. So Upper Egypt, and he conquered the South Egypt, which is the lower stream of Nile River. So he conquered the north and the south, and he's the first emperor of the Egypt kingdom. Okay, so how far we are? So he have a palettes that shows he is conquering the lower Egypt, and he has to be understood as being extremely powerful because everyone else is so feeble in comparison. It is a very simple, very simple, primitive and yet effective way to convey the message. Here at the very beginning of the Western art history, primitive is also to be expected. So in Western art history, we have a lot of primitive art. My lights just turned off by itself, so don't worry about it. It happens. Okay, it's back. Let's see. The artist used a crucial technical hierarchical skill. Okay, this is a technical term. Hierarchical skill. Hierarchy means putting things in order. Hierarchical skill is related to that. It is a simple, primitive, unrealistic, but efficient and practical kind of visual communication that puts things in a hierarchy according to what is most important. What is next most important? Importance is the key concept here. The difficult concept that hierarchical skill exists to express. That explains the hierarchy parts, but the scale part is where students tend to be most easily confused. This refers only to the size of the figure. So on the palette of number, there's a figure of him conquering the enemies, and then he is the biggest figure on the palette because he is the most important person in the story, in this scenario. And then the smallest objects or people are the enemies, so they are like according to the hierarchy, they are less important, and they are more like a helpless, weak kind of message throughout the picture. So they are like a bunch of small people on this palette, and Narmer is like the biggest figure. So the point, quite simple, is that in hierarchical skill, the artist makes the most important figure the biggest, the second most important the second biggest, etc., down to the least important figure, who is predictably the smallest. It is quite impossible to be realistic while using hierarchical skill, because then again, in hierarchical skill, the message about what? Message about importance is always very clear, indeed obvious. No viewer ever think that the artist is trying to tell us that the king is 20 feet tall, but rather that the king is a whole lot more important than conventionally sized people. Commonly in primitive art like that of early Mesopotamia or Old Kingdom Egypt, the king's enemies are shown as helpless tiny little pipsqueaks to help illustrate how overwhelmingly powerful the king is. The system is not subtle at all, but kings trying to get a propagandistic message across never really have much use for subtlety, nor do they care about realism or even good design. What they want is for their message to get across, and for that the simple primitive system of hierarchical skill is a valuable, reliable way to communicate. More sophisticated cultures and patrons will show in the techniques, of course. Okay, so we read a little bit of Egypt culture, the context, mostly about numbers, palettes, and the design concept of it. I hope you have learned something from it, and I will get more prepared for my quiz on the coming Wednesday. And now I need to get ready for my class